Hi everybody, I'm Sarah Moa. I'm, I suppose, principally a journalist. I'm somebody who asks questions. I have other hats. One of them is that I'm the chief critic for VogueRunway.com, and I'm ambassador for emerging talent for the British Fashion Council, which means not sitting in the British Fashion Council, but going out and talking to young designers, which I've been doing for a long time. And I'm so absolutely thrilled to welcome Ursula and Carrie Sommers to this conference because, well, apart from anything else, I admire you intensely. And you've recently been listed as amongst the 8 most iconic sustainability warriors in the world. Did you know that?
No.
It's on something called List. And you share that honour with people like Meghan Markle and Pharrell Williams, apparently. I wanted to ask you both about Fashion Revolution. It's a very serious anniversary this week because it is the anniversary of the Rana Plaza disaster. So perhaps you could both talk to why Fashion Revolution began at that point.
Yes, I mean, maybe I should start on that. I mean, we saw the disaster happening. I remember seeing it unfolding before my eyes. And I think, first of all, we'd always warned that a disaster of this scale was on the cards. Most people knew that the factories were unsafe. And in the days following...
The factories were producing fast fashion.
Producing fashion generally, I think not just fast fashion, because a lot of mass-produced luxury is made on exactly the same production lines. We can't say it's just fast fashion. And afterwards, the activists were having to search through the rubble to prove which brands were actually producing there. And I'd done a lot of work with my Panama hat brand, Pachacuti, over the past decades in terms of traceability and transparency, sort of fully transparent right back to the raw materials. And I understood how important transparency was for the fashion industry. But whenever I talked about it, nobody seemed interested at all. And I think my main thoughts after the disaster were, well, finally people will understand why transparency is so important for the industry, because brands really didn't know what their relationship was with any of the factories operating within that factory complex. And I wasn't trying to think of any kind of a response to the disaster, and Fashion Revolution literally hit me in the bathtub a few days afterwards, and it seemed like a good enough idea to get out of the bath and do something about it. So I immediately got out of my bath and picked up the phone to Ursula.
Yeah, we had, it was interesting. So Carrie and I met at Estetica, that you know very well. Estetica was the sustainable fashion initiative at London Fashion Week with the British Fashion Council. And in many ways, in those corridors, lots of conversation happened. And as Carrie said...
It was at a time 10 years ago when sustainable fashion was kind of in its own pen, wasn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, you invented that space, and it was an exhibition within London Fashion Week of designers who you defined as sustainable?
Yeah, well, we started with several names. I think the first year it was eco-sustainable fashion. I mean, I've really never liked the term sustainable fashion. No. It's just fashion to me, then make of the word just what you want. But, I feel that, sustainability, we need to honor the designers and the systems and the techniques that they choose to use, and they all have very varying different names. But it seems to me, and it seemed to me at the time, that there was not just a need for utter change, but for a cultural change. And while, the Fashion Transparency Index, it's incredibly important in the sense that it monitors brands and we look at their performance, but it also demands a radical cultural shift of an industry that really has so far been built on opacity, on closed doors, and elitism. So it has this interesting double edge. It's a double-edged tool, really, that it measures, therefore it's very technological and, highly, futuristic, but at the same time, it does reconnect us with some very basic instincts, which are who are making my clothes and in what conditions. And we tended to know the origins of our clothing before because provenance was also related to the quality, and almost everybody knew who made them. So we've lost all of these connections in this gigantification of the industry. And I guess, what Carrie was saying is that, it was completely uninteresting to everyone, and now the conversation is so much more advanced.
I think one thing that you actually completely changed my way of thinking was when you started to talk about us not as consumers but as citizens. And I think this is a conversion that, the Rana Plaza, just seeing that on television, you think, actually, this is my responsibility, because if I've ever been to Primark or wherever else, then, literally I am putting my money into this system. So this idea of changing, thinking of ourselves as people who can choose to put our money towards good or bad things, or in between things, or what are we putting the question is, what are we buying? I think this is what's so terribly difficult. But as Sinclair from Sullivan McCartney said before, it's about rigour, not opinions. And so this Fashion Transparency Index, can you explain exactly what it is? Because this is something that tracks or shows what the status of companies are, who will cooperate with you, I suppose. Explain to me what the Fashion Transparency Index is.
Yes, the Fashion Transparency Index is something which Fashion Revolution publishes every year. We just published the 4th edition this week, and we are ranking 200 of the world's biggest fashion brands and retailers in terms of how much they are publicly disclosing about their policies, practices, procedures, and also about their impact on human rights and on the environment. And so we will look at issues like governance, we will look at traceability, so whether they are mapping and publicly disclosing their first-tier factories where clothes are sewn together, their processing facilities, even down to the raw material suppliers. We'll look at no-show fix, which is...
How do you do that? Do you do that as investigative people on the ground, or do you take it from the company website? How do you get to those
It's about
facts?
public disclosure, so it's the information that's on their website or directly linked from their website. So we need it to be something that, normal citizens who want to find out information can find when they go to the brand's website. And actually, when brands do publish this information, it helps to build consumer trust in the brands that they buy. So this is really good for the brands as well. And we have seen...
Well, it's bad for the brands if they're publicly traded and you have people standing up in their shareholders' meetings and calling them to account, or calling them to account calling them out on social media, I suppose. Do you think that's what you're hoping for? That the citizen awareness will change, will start to go towards asking these questions?
I think the most important thing about having transparent supply chains is it helps to fix and remediate any problems which are found much more rapidly. So if there are instances of human rights abuses, then it's much easier for unions to go to the brand and say, well, look, you have a policy on freedom of association. These people have just been expelled for being members of a union. What are you going to do about it? And we know that it helps problems to get resolved much faster. Whereas if brands aren't publishing their factory list, for example, then the workers will have to seek remediation through the national court process, which is a very, very lengthy process.
But Sarah, we are also expecting people to start looking at these indexes and asking questions that are more pertinent, because we can't take information the same way that we take fast fashion, i.e. it's there and I take it. The whole point of being
conscious... Well, I want to know what's not a fake fact. I want to know... I think this is a really big difficulty at the moment, in that, things are called out and then you find out, actually, that's fake news. That's fake news. So there has to be somewhere you can go which you can trust.
But we're ushering in, there can't be just one question. I mean, if there's something that we're hearing today, is that there are multiple points of views, opportunities, and multiple gut feelings. Finally, sustainability is not just about organic cotton, but it really is about the culture that we live in. And therefore, we all have to be able to somehow navigate Google, but checking our stomachs first. You know, are you interested in the animal welfare debate? You know, so then check what the brands that you're buying from is claiming that they're doing about animal welfare. Pick up the phone and really double check that information, because the whole point is that consciousness, anyway, to me, is the opposite of being catatonic. Catatonic is what we've done for the last 20 years, 30 years. Buy, never think. And consciousness means, what am I putting on me? What am I saying with what I'm wearing? And also, how can I and how can citizens interact with the people that make our clothes? And I want to go back to what Jennifer was saying, a culture of empathy. Well, we've been saying at Fashion Revolution, it's empathy without pity. We want to meet the people that make our clothes. We want to ensure that they're working in safe conditions for them and for us, really. So create this, you know, this new state of moving from a culture of exploitation into appreciation to further appreciate the clothes that we wear.
Mm-hmm. I think you made a really good point there as well, because we want to know that brands' policies are really effective and that they're really driving change for the people making our clothes. And that's why we look at their impact on human rights. So we want to know, for example, that brands don't just have long-term goals, but that those goals are time-bound and that they're measuring progress towards those goals. So, for example, about 33% of the brands have working on some sort of women's empowerment project in their supply chain, but only 3 out of the 200 brands are actually disclosing any data on gender-based violations in their supply chain. 63% of the brands have policies on equal pay, but only 33% of the brands are disclosing their equal pay gap. So this is why we need this information. So we are looking at the impact of their policies as well. And I think that's where you can really see whether brands are making progress or whether it's all just words, empty words of vision and mission statements.
I'm very aware of the 5 years that we've got. It makes me really think, because I'm a visiting professor here at this university and several others. So I know that, so somebody joins here today to do a foundation course and they're studying fashion and they get to MA. That means at the span of that person's education, that's going to be it, time's up. You know, the world will end when that person graduates. So what about the sense of urgency? What are the really big things we can do to change? There's what we were talking about, which is obviously very, 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 very detailed and very long term and very, very, very complex. But I mean, what's your view of what's going to happen in the next 5 years?
Well, I mean, you know, if I had a clear view of what's going to happen in the next 5 years, I would have already put it out there. I don't, and nobody does have a solution, which is why, for me, you know, it is very much, as Sophia was saying, you know, about the narrative you tell yourself, and, you know, are you going to die catatonic or with a fight? And I think that we all need to fight for what we've got left, and also we all need to understand. You know, Celine was talking before, how do we redefine sustainability? Well, for fashion designers, young fashion designers, for sure, you have to take your own creativity, you have to add efficiency, decency, and common sense, and you're really on your way. You know, creativity helps hugely. But for me, the main point is that we all need to really look at our own habits. We are in the middle of the fashion supply chain with everything we wear. You know, the fashion value chain doesn't stop when we've bought something. It continues via us. And Priya was saying, how about we wear something until it falls apart? How about we wear something while it falls apart? I celebrate every single tear in my clothes, and I see them as, you know, battle cries of my life and the life before, and hopefully the life after. So it's about reconnecting emotionally, because it is an emotional time. As Extinction Rebellion says, it is a time for grief. So we have to own this grief, and then we have to become a part of the solution, because as clothes wearer, we are also a part of the problem. So, you know, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years,
And also, ultimately, we need legislation to get the
Yes.
laggards to move, whether those are laggard brands or whether they're the consumers that don't care. And with the right legislation and incentives in place, then both companies and consumers can be encouraged and supported and pushed on to adopt more sustainable practices.
The
And
thing
we
about
begin to
incentive,
see-
though, is a kind of double-edged sword, isn't it? Because, you know, if the incentive is, you can be sort of so-called, I'll use that word sustainable, which of course we all hate, then you'll sell more. That in itself, in that sentence, is a contradiction, right?
Yeah, completely.
Yeah, completely.
But the point that was being made before, you know, it's like whether it's fast fashion, premium fashion, luxury fashion, women's wear, you know, if we want to define it, the whole point of it is that it's been made by somebody and it's been made out of something that's been extracted from somewhere, and that's also going to be the fate of it afterwards. So it's that respect, you know, we need to start placing respect above, you know, the system, processes, and so on and so forth. And we are beginning to see, you know, governments, you know, in the UK we have the Anti-Slavery Act. There's been the recent government inquiry, at which Fashion Revolution very definitely collaborated. So it's these joint conversations and the understanding. That's the urgency. The urgency is also to lead by example and understand that it's not one group of stakeholders that will change this scenario. It's all stakeholders together saying, what can you do and how can you help me? So if Mara Hoffman can pick up the phone and call Stella McCartney, then we should all do similar things and actually ask other people to be able to help us in those areas where we're less clear and exchange information too.
I will say that the most encouraging and I should say humbling thing for me is that I am now, having been I'm obviously an elder, now I'm learning from students and younger school children. I think that now they're in this university and every university I go into, here and abroad, to talk to fashion students. They're the ones telling me that they're not prepared to work with big brands who have a huge waste problem, and they're warriors. They're very, very uncompromising, and they are the ones who are educating us and making me realise how many questions I have to ask. I've felt intimidated actually to be on this panel, because I felt that I'm not speaking from from a throne of great wisdom, and then I realised that none of us do have that throne, and it is really all about sharing. Sharing information is something that people in this university, in particularly, do incredibly well. They've created. We're talking about forming global movements. The students I know and the recent graduates I know. And the ones who are now kind of established over the past 10 years in this country have only flourished because they are a community. They share information. They help each other out, and now they're doing that with issues of how to get things made, and also respecting one another and respecting who makes their clothes. So I would say that's an accelerated change that I've seen happen in the past 4 years. And what I see in London is that different communities little small bubbles of communities are coming up, and they're kind of joined together like cells, and they're all different. And it's my hope, my dream of a utopia, probably after I'm dead, that that is what the fashion industry will be all over the world. And not this huge linear mass manufacturing monster.
I totally agree with you, and I mean I feel very much, because I know I've been inhabiting this space in London, and London really cherishes and promotes young designers, and for me this is a very clear step for the future. It's actually visually, architectonically almost, imagine what a new high street looks like. And the new high street is way more diverse than what we are seeing right now. There's a mending shop just as close as there is the newsagent. There is a young artisan, there is a young designer, there's Gucci, there's H&M, but everybody is ultimately, and at the end of the day, producing respectfully and producing decent quantities, because this whole slowing down thing, of course, is incredibly important. And we do need to usher in technology with a different behavior when it comes to the clothes that we wear, and in the case of young designers, the clothing that we produce. But, you know, fashion revolution, I feel we have a presence in so many countries,
And so how many
globally.
countries?
Well, we kind of don't really give a number because they fluctuate, and some of them are very strong teams.
So how did you
others
do
are-
that? How did you turn it into a global movement?
I think a lot of the success of Fashion Revolution, which ties into this, has been using the language of fashion, the visuals of fashion, but also making those really complex issues in the fashion industry accessible to the public. We have a mantra: be curious, find out, and do something about it. So everybody can ask the question, who made my clothes? I've asked it about my skirt, I've asked where the viscose came from for this cardigan. You can ask the shop assistants, you can ask online. And then if you want to dig a little bit deeper, we've got some really great how-to videos. So if you want to find out how to darn the hole in your jumper or mend a cardigan, you can find out online. We have a MOOC, a massive open online course on the Sustainable Development Goals, which is opening for registration on Monday. So there's lots of ways in which people can just, you know, they can dip in or they can dig down deeper. And actually, if you look at our website and the resources that are on there, I think a lot of people around the world have just, you know, used them as a way to actually access the information and get to grips with some of the complexities of the industry.
And I think we also, because we're so global, we actually realize that the conversation is extremely different in South Africa than it is in Finland. And so all of these conversations that we've heard today, because fundamentally fashion is about people. So we are talking about the people and the environment that we all kind of share. But we do understand that, you know, the life is going to look very different in different sides of the globe. And so we've encouraged a conversation that isn't prescriptive, but it's much more spontaneous. And whoever really can be a part. So we're very unjudgmental in those terms, and we're very eager to listen and find out. But yes, I do agree. I think that we do need to start to celebrate the complexity of this, because if we are expecting, you know, one solution or one shop where you can go and buy that one perfectly sustainable collection, then you might as well be very, very lazy and stay in bed. If you actually want to do something, first of all, before you even look for the answer, you really need to understand the question.
I've had the 5-minute flash at me, so I'm going to hand over to the audience. Is anybody who'd like to ask this incredible woman a question? Yes.
Can I do without the microphone?
Yes. Well, if people can hear.
Before I ask the question, I guess start from the... Thank you so much for Fashion Revolution, first of all. It's amazing and very inspirational. I think before I start asking the question is that I am conscious and I really like what Oliver Bonas does in terms of the merchandise. And I was, okay, I want to buy something from them, went to the website, and they have ethical code of conduct document there. And to me, it looked too good. You know, very sustainable, very ethical, blah, 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 blah. Then I start to dig into what actually ethical conduct is, and basically it's companies audit their supply chains partners, and it's regulated by the corporations. So basically, whatever report is there is regulated by corporations, and they decide what you see there. So and I was kind of really upset and confused. Like, you want to do a good choice, and if you're not a customer like me, you would read the documents, you would be like, oh, that's great, I buy from them. So, and you put money into the corporation that doesn't give a crap about the movement, the planet. They're basically doing something just to, you know, enrich themselves. And my question is, how do we tackle this problem when it's literally greenwashing, you know, taking advantage from consumers?
Well, you've already tackled it. you've done your research, and right now there's very little else that you can do except make up your mind and have your own opinions, because, you know, we can go on and on and on here, but, you know, yes, transparency in many cases is self-declared by the brands. You know, but that's precisely the whole exercise. If we want to change this culture, we need to keep asking the questions and ensure that the brand understands, eventually they will, not personally from you, but that there is skepticism, just as there is willingness to be better citizens and, above all, better customers. So my point is that I understand the confusion, but I turn it around. I commend you for doing the work, and my suggestion would be, do buy your Oliver Bonas piece, but when you buy it, ask yourself a whole load of other questions, which are, how much do I love it? Who else in my family or amongst my friends could wear it? Where is my local dry cleaners that actually has a sewing machine so that they can mend it when it breaks? Do I want to mend it? Let me find out if I want to do a mending course. Am I going to have children? I'll leave it for them when they grow up. So that there are so many ways, and that will buy you time. And hopefully by the time all of those things are done, then Oliver Bonas will have the type of policy that makes you feel really comfortable in buying them.
And also, we do know that asking the question, who made my clothes, is really powerful. I mean, it seems like it might be quite insignificant, but I was told by an industry insider that for every one person asking a brand who made my clothes, they were taking that as representing 10,000 people who thought the same way but couldn't be bothered to do anything about it. And I think that's really significant. Oliver Bonas isn't big enough to be included in the Fashion Transparency Index, but again, we do find that's a really useful tool for pushing brands to being more transparent. We know anecdotally the brands who are on our panel here at the beginning of the week at the Fashion Transparency Index press launch are saying, well, there's a sense of competition, particularly between brands of similar ilk, the luxury brands, the sportswear brands, and they want to do better every year. You know, Hermès doesn't want to have a lower score than Burberry. H&M wants to beat C&A. So we're seeing a real sense of competition, and this is spurring brands on to publish more information. And if that information is published, then it will make our job as citizens who want to make responsible choices a lot easier.
Is there anyone else? Just one. There's one hand there.
Hello. First of all, I wanted to thank you, all the speakers, because it was amazing. And I hope my question is relevant. I discussed this when I was at university with my classmates in debates that we had. And I wanted to ask, what do you think about the take-back schemes that they have, some like fast fashion brands? Do you think that it's still like really useful, or it's something that it just like push more consumption?
100% complete gimmick. I mean, irrelevant gimmick, 1 billion%, you might as well donate it to charity. Anything that tells you that a give-back scheme that gives you a bonus to buy something else, no. I mean, but, again, you know, the glass half full, half empty. It's starting a conversation. So, you know, again, you have to make your own mind up. I'm asked all the time, what about the conscious collection? What about this? You know, is this a greenwash? And I just say, you are the only person that can answer that to yourself. For me, the take-back scheme is a gimmick, but nevertheless, it's bringing people to think about taking something back. So which side are you on?
I think that's a pretty good note to end it on. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.